Hello, welcome. Now, I've noticed something lately that you have been aware of, and that is that this last assignment I did not post. So what I'm going to do, as I always do, as I promise not to punish you for my mistakes, I'm going to put a very long due date on it. Okay. But nevertheless, I would like to get back on track with the test. So I want to kind of go over the test um, today. Okay. So I apologize for that, as the assignment I think you'll find is pretty straightforward, and make sure that you guys are prepared to take the test. I don't know that I'm going to go through every single question as far as the answer thereof, but I'm definitely going to help. Okay. So thank you, and I apologize, as we definitely got to take care of that. So I'll probably literally have it due uh like toward the end of the semester. All right. But I need you to be familiar with it uh in the event of the questions on the test. All right. So so with it, right, it's pretty simple. Is that strangely, right, Mexico is going to have a civil war right about the time that America has its civil war in the 1860s, although it began in 1857. Um, and so they're going to have a war between the conservatives and the liberals. All right. And we just want to kind of go back over what each of them basically stood for. Okay. So the conservatives were pretty darn conservative. They were okay with a landed aristocracy being granted large tracts of land with their connection to the executive. They wanted a strong executive, even to the point of having a monarch, a constitutional monarch, but a monarch nevertheless. They wanted high property requirements for citizenship to make sure that only the most educated and well-to-do gentlemen were citizens of the Mexican Republic. And they wanted to keep the Catholic Church, the official church, with all its ancient privileges and powers. All right. And so that was the conservatives. The liberals of Mexico, right? They wanted to they claimed to be like moderns, right? Like in the Cultural War of the 1920s, calling themselves moderns. They wanted to secularize society. They wanted to take education away from the Catholic Church and provide a public kind of secular education to the Mexican children. They wanted to bring in international and national creditors and bankers rather than have to depend upon the Catholic Church for its funds as the major money lender of the country. And so you see a lot of their stances were against the Catholic Church, were at the expense of the Catholic Church. Um, they wanted a republic with not too strong of an executive, with a broader franchise of citizens and more participation in the legislator, popular participation in the making of laws. All right. And so they found themselves at war at the end of the 1850s, and the liberals are going to prevail on the battlefield, and the conservatives do not give up there, right? When they see that they are losing, they ask the French to come and intervene. And so the French intervene in the person of Maximilian, who is of the Habsburg dynasty. And if you may remember, Carlos the First or Charles the Fifth, the Holy Roman Emperor over Spain, was part of the Habsburg dynasty. And so at any rate, so you have that. And so it's kind of it had a tinge of destiny to have a Habsburg. Pardon me for a minute. My dumb French bulldog. Stop it. Get out of here. Sorry about that. Um, so at any rate, the French come in, and at first they prevail on the battlefield. And so it gives time for Emperor Maximilian to do a tour around Mexico and to sit on the throne as literally an emperor, as kind of archaic as that sounds. All right. So notice, right? Some of this with the church, with the liberals, right, is they were trying to help out the indigenous. They felt like, beginning with Gomez Farias in 1832, there was a feeling that the indigenous were being exploited on the missions, so they secularized the missions, right? They closed them down, and they were supposed to give that mission land to the Native Americans, and it didn't work out that way. But they had that intention. Um, Another thing is that the Native Americans did not have the money uh, to um, to pay for the rights and the holidays and the special days connected to the Catholic Church. So if they had a daughter with a quinceañera, they had a baptism, they had confirmation, whatever it might be, it involved a payment that they were unable to make quite often. So what happened, right, was their hacendado would pay it for them, and they had to work it off on his plantation. And so it was kind of like a debt peonage, as they call it, the name they gave to it. And you're constantly trying to work off your debt on the hacienda. Okay. So at any rate, and then some you have were luneros, like lunes for Monday, who just came and worked Mondays. Some were like uh, sharecroppers who rented portions of the hacendados' land and only received a portion of their share of the harvest. And so you had a few different capacities that the natives could work, but the image that was conveyed the most, right, was the peones, the people that were in debt and had to work on that as virtual serfs on these plantations. So look at the Ley Juarez. Benito Juarez was the first indigenous president of Mexico, and he was proud of that. Although at the time it was meant to be like a source of embarrassment. But he's well educated. He almost completely made it through seminary to be a priest, and then changed his mind and became an abogado, a lawyer. And yeah, he fought for the rights of the poor as a lawyer, and he did so later as a politician. So the Ley Juarez, it ended the military and the clergy's fueros. So now the military and the clergy were to stand like civilians in trial for any crimes they had committed. Right. The lay iglesias, right? And iglesias are churches. Prohibited the Catholic Church from charging exorbitant fees, administering real property not daily utilized for church purposes, or I'm sorry, exorbiting high prices for sacraments. And then the ley lerdo, and that was named after Lerdo, a liberal politician, prohibited the Catholic Church from owning or administering real property not daily utilized for church purposes. So what they did, right, is they forced the Catholic Church to make loans to the government, to the liberal government, and they expropriated lands that the church was not using. They made the church sell those lands back to the government that they were not presently using. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see here. These reform laws and the Constitution of 1857 were interpreted by the Catholic Church as a liberal declaration of war. Those who swore allegiance to the liberal Constitution of 1857, those who purchased confiscated Catholic property, and even those who supported the 1857 Constitution's Bill of Rights, freedom of religion, freedom of education, of the press, speech, etc., were denied the sacraments by the church, last rites, and burial on holy ground. So the church declares war right back against the liberal party. And of course, they could be threatened with excommunication And with that, not being able to engage in any of the sacraments was tantamount to having your soul go to hell. All right. Uh, Even Pope Pius IX intervened with an official statement to Mexican Catholics to energetically reprove everything the Mexican government has done against the Catholic religion and its scorn of ecclesiastical authority. All right. So, needless to say, the Mexican people felt torn because the liberals seemed to be on the side of social justice for the poor, right? And for equality. But they were doing it at the expense of the Catholic Church. And most Mexicans were faithful Catholics. So that is Benito Juarez, the first indigenous liberal president. So such was the religious polarization, splitting in two, that Mexican conservatives first fought a civil war and subsequently invited and aided the intervention of French forces. All right. So at the Battle of Puebla, and by the way, this did not end the war. There still were many liberal victories that had to be won, but there was people considered it a light in the darkness, right? As the French kept winning. On the Cinco de Mayo, right, of 1862, they fought the Battle of Puebla, and they were outnumbered, and they were supposed to lose, and they won under Zaragoza. And a young guy named Porfirio Diaz, who will come up later. All right, so let's see here. Mexico's first indigenous president from Oaxaca tasted plenty of humble pie for the next 4 years. He kept having to move and flee and have his government in exile as Ferdinand Maximilian claimed that he was ruling the country. All right. Matter of fact, there's one little anecdote whereby he came into an inn and he spilled his coffee and he was reprimanded by the criada, like the helper there, and she was very angry with him. And then she was subsequently told, that's the president in hiding. And then she came and was very embarrassed, and he just laughed and said he had been treated worse. All right, and so notice a couple of the names of the conservatives: Jose Miguel Gutierrez Estrada and Father Francisco Javier Miranda invited Maximilian in to rule. The Mexican people always felt awkward with this foreign emperor. Notice, right, they revoked the liberal reform laws for now. And then both sides began to engage in guerrilla warfare, right? And guerra is war, guerrilla is little warfare. So the liberal army ends up winning, and they end up trying Maximilian and having him shot and executed. And he had plenty of chances to leave the country as the tide had turned, and he refused kind of stubbornly, said he was the people's choice, which of course was a little bit delusional, right? So all I'm saying on this, right? But in Mexico, let's see here. In the subsequent liberation theology movement of the 1900s, the Catholic Church chose the right side of social justice. But in Mexico, the previous century, it made the path to social justice and modernization unnecessarily painful. So I say, right, that the Catholic Church was unfortunately on the wrong side of social justice during its civil war, and it lost. Okay. So looking at your test, Bernard Bailyn, he is the romantic guy of the American Revolution, contending that it was a revolution, and claimed that it was enlightened ideals that led the founding fathers and the people to fight against the British and their small infringements toward tyranny. All right. Paul Johnson, in the Salutary Neglect thesis, stated that the British were very poorly enforced their mercantilist restrictions and their laws, and so the Americans did very well during their absence, because salutary means healthy, right? We were neglected, but it had a healthy effect. So the royal policies were not enforced, and we ended up fighting to keep a good thing going, to sustain that good thing. Howard Zinn has a much more cynical thesis, right? He says that the founding fathers were demagogues. He says that they hijacked the Poors' rebellion, and they used the British as a convenient scapegoat. Guadalupe Victoria, from 1824 to 28, ruled as the first president of a liberal republic of Mexico, and he actually finished his whole term without a coup or a revolution. And if you recall from the writings, after that, it was not the same. So how did I contrast early Mexico with early U.S.? As remember, I said that the U.S., I'm kind of redundant in this way. The U.S. had a common conservative consensus, right? To not address the controversial issues like slavery, political equality for all men, etc., right? Whereas the gap between the liberals and conservatives in Mexico and in Latin America was much broader, and they did address those controversial issues. So it was kind of like no good deed goes unpunished. The Mexican people, in addressing more radical stances, brought about more chaos. So again, the ideological gap with the founding fathers was narrow. And then on this one, right, there was a bipartisan agreement after the War of 1812 to follow Hamilton's plan and his system. And I do give credit to his system for working well, regardless of where you stand on the ideological spectrum. Judicial branches made a business, just a business-friendly environment through their decisions. And I have a couple examples of those in the writing. And the Federalists did not dominate national politics after the War of 1812. They died as a party, and they will come back as the Whigs. So the Jacksonian era, with the Jacksonian era, remember that they did enfranchise virtually all WASP men, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant men. The states did. They did supposedly cater to the desire for lands and the prejudices against Native Americans and against Mexicans in the 1830s, like in Texas, with the loss of Texas. Elected judges would find it more difficult to turn down their constituents' pleas for squatters' rights. That is true, because now they had to be elected. Squatters' rights were strengthened. And the Charles River Bridge case did declare equality of economic opportunity. So wait a minute. One of these has to be wrong. Now possible for squatters to gain possession of at least portions. That's true. Okay, I'm going to have to come up with an E, you guys. A wrong answer on 8. All those are correct. Let me do this for myself. Boy, I'm batting 1,000 lately. Okay. Santa Ana and Tallahassee Coahuila highlights the ultra-conservative constitutions of Santa Ana. American court history. Yeah, matter of fact, it does. Highlights gringo defiance? No, because American court history, it defends the Americans. So it's the very first one. Chicano history, however, right, highlights the gringo defiance of Mexican law. The April 6th colonization law did not declare an end to Norte Americano immigration. Yes, it did. Demand that Norte Americanos in Texas abide by Mexican law. Yes, it did. Bring about Stephen Austin's immediate switch toward promoting independence. No. Lead to Norte Americano protests. Yes. The one about Stephen Austin is the one that's wrong. And this one I tried to convey. John C. Fremont, real sketchy. His three trips into Mexican California. There were at least 3 or 4 of them, Americans. The others, however, were mountain men, right? And only one other under Bonneville. A guy named Bonneville was in the military, and he likely sent a guy named Wilson into Mexican California. But this one, John C. Fremont, was much more well known because he himself was military, wearing a U.S. military uniform. And yes, he came in a second and third time without proper papers. And yes, he did go up to Oregon and meet an American spy named Archibald Gillespie, which is all very sketchy as far as American designs on California. Mountain men were not depicted as would-be capitalists of the far West. Yes, they were. Responsible for popularizing the West and the overland trails. Yes. Tied to Norte Americanos being seen as a threat to Mexican California. Absolutely. Directly tied to the Bear Flag Revolt. No. Stephen Austin was depicted in class ambiguously. Yes, he was. He was loyal right up until the end. When he was arrested by the Mexican authorities, that's when he gave up trying to be a peacekeeper. And William Baird Travis, did he arguably bring an ethnic dimension to the fight in Texas? Absolutely. Remember, he called them a mongrel race. And he wanted liberty-loving Anglo-Americans to come and fight for Texas. So it was more than against Santa Anna's conservative constitution. 16, the Bidwell-Bartleson Party's entrance into California should have served as a warning to Mexican authorities in California by its number of adventurers and ex-soldiers. No, that's kind of a trick question. It did not have adventurers and ex-soldiers. But, right, Chicano historians liken the Bidwell-Bartleson Party to a Trojan horse because they themselves seem to have been harmless. They were like teachers and Sunday school teachers and preachers and families with kids. So they seemed harmless, and they brought, quote, enterprise, according to Vallejo. So he said, go ahead, let them in into Sutter's area in Sacramento through a gap, the Wilson Gap in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And after that, however, right, there you had people that were a lot more sketchy that came in. There's a guy named Isaac Graham, Ezekiel Merritt, and these guys were known troublemakers. Which of the following was not mentioned as contributing to American organ fever in the 1840s? The fur trapping business? Absolutely. Missions? All right. Yes, I'm sorry. Missions to Oregon? Yes. Published travel accounts? Yes. Government subsidization of the overland trails? Absolutely. British grants of full citizenship rights to Americans in Oregon? No. Which of the following is false regarding Mexican politics in California? There were many coups, even including 2 gentlemen claiming to be governor at the same time. Yes. Mexican politicians inadvertently empowered rebellious Norte Americanos like Isaac Graham by borrowing money from them and employing them as mercenaries. Yes. Mexican government appeared weak after an American adventurer successfully invaded the North California coast. Yes. Mexican politicians successfully united when threatened by Norte Americano imperialist designs? No, sadly, they did not. Number 19, New England merchandise was accepted by Mexican California authorities, and this served as a window of entry for Norte Americanos. Yes. The Bear Flag Revolt lecture brought to mind Vallejo's dilemma with his liberal education and wanting to be cosmopolitan, and the gringos bringing, quote, enterprise, but yet not really trusting them. Absolutely. Skepticism about Fremont and Thomas Oliver Larkin. Absolutely. Thomas Oliver Larkin, he lent money in Monterey to a lot of Mexican businessmen and politicians. He was there for quite a few years, from like the early 1830s up until 1846 when the war broke out. He had shown loyalty in certain ways, but he did not get baptized as a Roman Catholic, and he did not renounce his American citizenship. And so he helped the Americans when they came in. And people like Abel Stearns stayed loyal as an American, stayed loyal to the Mexican authorities to the end. Contended that while Mexican popular opposition in the Bay Area was reportedly weak, Los Angeles Californios put up a valiant fight. Yes. And they took on Robert Stockton and Stephen Kearny. So it's all the above. Frederick Jackson Turner. Okay. I'm going to let you guys do that one. All right. Turner's thesis. It's pretty easy. Okay. Hispanics in the West. I think I'm going to let you do that one as well. You guys can do that. Right. 23. What do the historical sources bring to light concerning typical Hispanic responses to their plight? Some fought within the system as capitalists or even politicians, and that others fought beyond the system, like social bandits. Yes. That they maintain their culture very well. Yes. Both of those are true. Las Gorras Blancas, the white hats, represent Latinos fighting back both within and beyond the system. Yes. Okay. 25, we basically have already done. Remember what I said about the dilemma that Vallejo had? You could get 25. The Mexican-American War was attributed to popular and party pressure? Absolutely. Was tied to Mexican and American tension regarding Texas and its annexation by the U.S.? Absolutely. It's often cited as provoked by the U.S. in a border dispute? Yes. It entails vilification of John Tyler and Polk, who made the moves to do such? Yes. All right. The American victory in the Mexican-American War was attributed in class to America's dual invasion, brilliant maneuvers as at places like Cerro Gordo, and technological industrial might. Absolutely. Mexican leaders were depicted as having shot themselves in the foot on several occasions and levels. Both of those are true. Which of the following is false? Polk and Clay received much public pressure to go to war with Mexico. Absolutely. Henry Clay changed his policy after initially opposing war with Mexico. Yes. He felt like he had to go with a popular vote or he wouldn't be elected as president. And of course, little did he know that because of that hesitance and how long it took him to change his mind was enough to do him in. And Polk ran almost solely on manifest destiny, saying he wanted California, and the voters elected him. That's why I blame the whole generation and not just the political leaders. At the outset of the California Gold Rush, President Polk tried to ban Mexican immigration and expel all no. That one doesn't fit. Amidst the gold rush, President Polk chose to allow trespassing into California. That is true. 29, the Wilmot Proviso did not propose to ban slavery in territories taken from Mexico. It did. Demonstrate the contention that taking the far west from Mexico would be tantamount to swallowing arsenic. Yes, someone said that between the pro-slave and the anti-slave factions. Immediately lead to slavery's prohibition in the West? No. The Proviso was in 1847, and Lincoln did not forbid slavery in the West until 1860. Well, he was elected in 1860, actually 1861, when he was inaugurated. Mexican Americans lost much property after the Mexican-American War, but not because American requirements for proof of property ownership were tough. Absolutely. Squatting rights over uncultivated land owned by others have been expanded during the age of Jackson. Absolutely. Many judges were now popularly elected and felt pressure. Yes. Many Anglo lawyers and corporate farmers and ranchers were greedy and corrupt. Yes. The Western land was legally considered American by conquest. Yeah, that's the one that doesn't fit because the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo stated that Mexican Americans are citizens and entitled to their land. So it didn't matter that those states now belong to the U.S. That in and of itself did not take away any of their property. Evidence of racial discrimination in 19th century America lies in all the following except, all right, by law discrimination, de jure, such as actual contracts prohibiting loans, rents, or sales to Mexicans, especially in Texas. That is true. De jure segregation of Asian and Hispanics in public schools. Yes, that is true by law. De facto, as it just happened instead of by law. Discrimination in that labor unions often excluded Asians and Hispanics and African Americans. Yes. Legislation prohibiting discourse in the Spanish language in public schools? No, at least not yet. Court history of the Civil War says that the U.S. experienced a moral crusade against the injustice of slavery. B. Revisionist interpretations to the Civil War include all but a Northern moral crusade against the injustice of slavery, the very first one. That doesn't fit in revisionist history. A factional dispute, yes. A dispute over the national government versus states and their sovereignty, yes. Competition for factions to win the West, yes. Number 34, radical Republicans were depicted in the handout solely in the likeness of William Dunning, that they just wanted to punish the South, solely in court history, that they were just crusaders. If you know me, I take a middle ground. As a mixed bag of bold and altruistic idealism, vindictiveness, and limited zeal. C. William Dunning's thesis contends that radical or congressional reconstruction emanated from Northern and Republican Party idealism and good intentions. No. What is false concerning African American agency? Is D. Ex-slaves, after about a year and a half, began to be voted in heavily. So D is the one that doesn't fit. Permanent contributions of Reconstruction. 13th through 15th Amendments, yes. The virtual end of the antebellum classes' domination, yes. Improvements in infrastructure, diversification, and access to credit, yes. Establishment of safety net institutions, yes. All the above. Right? I'm going to let you guys do 38. Okay, it's on the U.S. Civil War and Reconstruction, and it's on the second to last, the first one on Reconstruction. They're just two sections, and it's the first one. Look and see how I explained that Reconstruction failed. Uh, 39 is true. 14th Amendment was huge. And 40. The instructor subjectively stated that in the mid-19th century, the Mexican Catholic Church served as an impediment to liberal growth and thereby made Mexican path to modernization more painful because biblical scripture promotes conservatism. The liberals appeared godless in their secularism. The Catholic Church was in an advantageous, powerful position with much to lose. The last one. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the date, like I said, for this last assignment. I might even do the entire semester. And test two, what I may do is stretch it to the date of the 17th, the same day that the Gilded Age is due. So in doing that, though, right, be sure that you use your time wisely so you have plenty of time to do both by the 17th, both this test and the subsequent assignment called the Gilded Age. Okay? So I hope that sounds fair. Like I said, anytime I make a mistake, I try to I try to react very leniently for your sake, because I always promise that my mistakes are not going to hurt you. All right. And I'm going to put in the message, because a lot of this was left up to my lecture. And so some of the other students aren't going to find in the handouts, and they're going to find that frustrating. So I'm going to highly recommend that others watch this video. All right. You guys feel okay about the test? Mas hermanos? Thank you, Angelina. Make sure I have all the names. All right. I think I have you. All right. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, that's it, okay? You guys kick this test butt. I should have it up by tonight, because what I have to do is I have to copy and paste the question, then option A, then option B. It's very painstakingly tedious putting the test on. So yeah, but I should have it by tonight, okay? So again, I'll put this on the 7th. This will be due the 17th, the same night that the following assignment, the Gilded Age, will be due. And then for the one that I forgot to put up, I'll probably literally put December 12th as the due date and give you the entire semester to do it. Okay? Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, okay?